Alright, yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. I remember this actually being my grade 5 year in elementary school. So if you guys don't know, in elementary school, you can't do much in elementary school. For example, you always have to listen to your teachers, you only get one teacher you always have to listen to, and on top of that, it's really not as fun as you think. Because if you really think about it, all you really have in elementary school is barely any freedom, and you just having to learn everything that you don't want to learn. I don't know, it kind of sucks, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Anyways, back in elementary school, I remember I had this teacher that really had some major anger issues. Like, for some reason, he would always get upset over the littlest things, and I guess he just doesn't understand that we were kids. And on the top of that, our teacher was a smoker, so it kind of sucked because he always smelled like cigarettes, especially when we were around him. But going on with the story, I remember one time when I was a kid and I first entered into my grade 5 class for my first day of elementary school, for being in grade 5 at least. I remember he said to everyone in the class, "All right, class, just don't be annoying, don't be dumb, don't be stupid, and I'll make sure everyone has a good time, all right?" I remember he said this and I was actually kind of threatened. To be honest, I didn't want to be in that classroom, and knowing how many people in my classroom are actually kind of already terrified of him, it made sense. And on top of that, I remember my first day of grade 5 when I went out for nut break, aka recess in a way. I remember I went out and I started talking to some other people in other classes, and they all said that we had the worst teacher ever. Honestly, having this teacher was the worst thing ever, and we're just gonna call the teacher Mr. T from now on because it's a lot easier than just calling him the teacher. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember Mr. T had some really weird issues with him. And obviously, for example, I remember during recess when we were out running around, playing around and hanging out, Mr. T was literally in the corner of our classroom by the door that entered us into our classroom, literally smoking a cigarette. Literally, you know how disgusting that is? Especially in front of an elementary school? I'm surprised he wasn't fired earlier. But going on with the story, things got from weird to worse. Because I remember every time we had a classroom moment, like for example, we were teaching something or trying to learn something on the whiteboard, he would always basically yell at us and basically call us losers for not really actually understanding. For example, he would always ask a question like, "All right, class, so what is the optimal direction of this area?" And I remember everyone would just look at each other like, "What surface area?" And then literally out of nowhere, he would look at all of us saying, "All right, Bubba, let's hear you say something. Come on, Bubba, say it." I remember he looked at me and I just looked at him like, "Dude, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what you're talking about." And the teacher looks at me saying, "First off, I'm not your dude. Go outside, sit down, and wait for the principal to come by." Wait, what? I was so confused. He was upset at me because I literally called him dude, but apparently that's just a part of his anger issues. So obviously I sat down and I basically sat in the hallway until a principal came by and saw me sitting down saying, "Is everything all right, Bubba? Why are you outside in the hallway?" And I said that Mr. T basically put me out here because I called him a dude. Yeah, like, I don't know. Apparently at this time he was a transgender or something. I don't know what he was, but I called him a dude, and I remember my principal said, "Oh, it's fine. Just go back inside." And then she ended up opening the door and basically letting me back in, and Mr. T didn't say anything, which is really dumb because I thought I was supposed to learn a lesson or something when I get in trouble, but he didn't teach me anything. Anyways, guys, going on with the story, I remember basically when the first day of grade 5 ended, I hated it. I remember going back to my parents' car that they picked me up in, and I started crying, saying, "I'm in the worst class ever." I remember my parents looked at me saying, "What do you mean, Bubba? What do you mean the worst class?" And I remember complaining to them how I had basically the most menacing, most rudest, most angrily teacher in the planet. My parents obviously at first thought that I was just being silly. They thought I was just being that kid that just made everything over dramatic, and well, they didn't want to listen to me, which really sucked because I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually a really smart kid, okay? Like back when I was in elementary school, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of crazy stories and many people don't believe it and stuff, which is fair enough. Knowing how hard my life was back then, I was actually pretty smart. Like, I gotta say, I'm wiser now because of it. But at the same time, knowing that my parents didn't believe me back when I was a kid, it sucked. And I think we all know this feeling when our parents don't believe us on something, when we know we're right about it, it really hurts us. But over time, I honestly said whatever, and I kept going off my day. I remember I went home, I ended up playing my Xbox and basically just kept doing my own thing. But then I remember at night when I had to go to bed, I basically was crying that night thinking I do not want to go back inside that classroom because it ultimately sucked. Who knows what was going to happen? But basically I remember closing my eyes, saying a quick prayer, hoping that Mr. T wouldn't go on my butt cheeks, and basically I just waited till the next day. The next morning I woke up and I went to school with hesitation. I'm not gonna lie, when my parents dropped me off, I was hesitating the whole entire time. But I remember I basically walked inside my classroom, I was being my normal self, and I sat down and I realized something. Mr. T was literally outside the classroom smoking and apparently was on a phone call with his lover or something. I have no idea, but I decided to listen in because I'm just a curious kid like that. And when I was listening in, I remember he said, "Oh yeah, these brats are not learning anything. They're so dumb and they don't listen. You know what I mean, honey? Like, they're just so dumb or something. But you know what? There's one girl in our classroom who's so annoying. I'm gonna make sure she understands her lesson." I remember when he he said that, I was actually kind of worried. I didn't know what he meant by that. Learn her lesson? Didn't he mean like a math lesson? A teaching lesson? I have no idea. But I remember I basically stayed away from the window and I basically went back to my seat hoping that he didn't notice me near him. I remember basically when the class started, the teacher walked in and, you know, as late as usual, he smelled like cigarettes and started teaching the classroom. Obviously, we were all disgusted and we didn't want to even be in there. But then I remember there's one girl in the class who was kind of that brainiac. If you guys don't know what I mean by brainiac, basically it's that one girl in our class who always like puts her hand up for everything, tries to be a smart student. And even though she mentioned in the beginning of the year how she wants to be friends with every teacher, she really actually tried to be friends with every teacher. Like, do you guys know that one student, every school and even high school, they have this where there's basically that one person that tries to be friends with every teacher and it gets so annoying. Anyways, going on with the story. I remember basically I was super angry and I just got annoyed. And I remember this girl kept putting her hand up after Mr. T kept saying questions. But in my mind and back of my head, I was thinking, oh, I wonder who he's talking about outside. Because I still want to know who he was talking about outside when he was saying an annoying student. But the more I thought about it, I actually ended up putting the two pieces together. Mr. T hated the student that was literally trying to just be friends with him. And don't get me wrong, like, if you guys don't understand what I mean by annoying Mr. T, I guess like she was putting her hand up so much to the point where no one else in the class got a turn. Because if she didn't get picked to, you know, basically say the answer, she would start basically kind of like putting a tantrum and stomping her feet, which is a really dumb habit. But I mean, it is what it is. We're just kids anyway. So anyways, going off the story, I remember basically she had like a major tantrum in the middle of a class because she wasn't picked to answer a very simple basic question. And I remember she ended up putting her hand down saying, I don't understand why you don't choose me. Like, I literally know the answer. I'm smarter than everyone in this classroom. And when she said that, I remember Mr. T ended up looking at the student really all angrily and stuff. And he ended up walking up to the student saying, you know, you made me think you're smart or something, but you're dumber than dumb. And then after that, I remember this girl started crying saying, why would you say that about me? I'm literally trying to be a smart student. And then out of nowhere, I remember I glanced away for a minute. I'm just thinking, this is funny. Seeing a girl cry in my class is hilarious. But then what Mr. T ended up doing next was straight up illegal. He ended up literally getting his backhand up and slapping her across the face. A straight up elementary schooler. Is that even legal? Warning for any teachers out there watching this video, don't slap your students. But I remember basically this teacher ended up slapping her student and she ended up crying like crazy. She was crying and crying and crying to the point where she actually had a red stain on her face because she was so pale white, to the point where basically anything could bruise up on her. I felt so bad for her. I remember standing up saying, Mr. T, did you really just hit her? Because I felt bad. And then Mr. T was all, yeah, you know, that's what you do, students, when you want to teach them a lesson. That's all you gotta do. I remember I was really pissed off and I only did the one thing that my parents taught me when I saw violence in front of me, and that's run and get help. So I remember I sprinted out of the classroom, ran and got help, and I went to the principal's office saying, Mr. T hit somebody. Mr. T hit somebody. Yeah, I actually had a lisp back then. Okay, don't make fun of me. But anyways, I remember my principal ended up coming to the classroom, seeing what happened, and basically Mr. T got suspended. Not fired, suspended. And basically we had a substitute for a couple days. Honestly, to this day, it really pisses me off what happened, but what ended up happening later on that like school year, I think pissed me off the most. But anyways, guys, that's basically it for today's story. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see all you dudes in the next video. Peace out, guys.